Dear friends, this is not good news. It is clear that something needs to be done to address Social Security's impending financial shortfall. But you may not like this new proposal to save Social Security. Some lawmakers are showing support for a plan that would make drastic changes to monthly benefits. Please make sure that you watch until the end of this video to hear about all of the new details. Also, this coming Friday and every Friday, I will be announcing winners for the Walmart gift card giveaway. If you would like to enter these weekly giveaway, friends, please click and like several of my videos, and then comment below the keyword of each video that you watch. The more videos that you comment on, friends, the greater your chances of winning the giveaways.
1 year ago today, we met that sacred obligation when I signed, after fighting so damn hard for the PACT Act, to sign it into law. And I want to thank all the veterans organizations for helping make that happen, because it matters. The PACT Act is one of the most significant laws ever signed to help veterans exposed to toxic materials and help their families recover, as well as receive compensation. You remember what we mean by burn pits. You know, when we first started using the phrase burn pits, people kind of looked at us. But a burn pit is what you saw, basically the giant burn pit. The first one everybody was aware of was in 9/11 when the buildings came down. Remember all those firemen that died of cancer and how they got covered? Well, when firefighters first responded, that's what happened. Now, the burn pits in Iraq, where we're talking about, and in other countries, Afghanistan, even in parts of throughout the Middle East, they're the size of football fields, up to 100 yards long, 20 yards to 30 yards wide, and 8 to 10 feet deep. And everything you can imagine is thrown into these pits to incinerate them. The wastes of war, tires, poisonous chemicals, jet fuel, and so much more. Toxic smoke, thick with poison, spreads through the air and into the lungs of our troops and their hooches where they live nearby these facilities. I know, I've been there in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've seen them. And you can smell it in the air. You can sometimes see it. And when these troops came home, many of them the fittest and best trained warriors that we ever sent anywhere were exposed to these burn pits. They weren't the same. And thousands of troops and they had to live in their hooches not far from proximity from these burn pits. The one in Iraq, my son was about 400 yards from one of the burn pits, living there for a year in his hooch. They breathe that toxic material sometimes for months at a time. In the case of my son and his buddies, for an entire year, causing headaches, numbness, dizziness, cancer. This is not about my son, but just an example of how close it was. My son, Bo, was one of those persons. He went the fittest guy in his unit and came home and he came home but died of glioblastoma. It's personal for my family, but it's also personal for so many of you. Secretary of the VA, McDonough, and I just had a long talk. He couldn't be here today, but he can tell you we're determined to address this problem, come hell or high water, and compensate these veterans and their families who have suffered from the consequences of this tragedy. It was part of my unity agenda, as I called it, when I did my first State of the Union, last State of the Union, to try to bring the country together on things I thought we all could agree on. First was beating the opioid epidemic, and we're working like hell on that, tackling mental health crisis, and there is a mental health crisis in America. Supporting our veterans. Look, I delivered that speech in March of last year, and a few months later, in August, with veterans groups making the case and never giving up, the Bipartisan PACT Act was on my desk to sign into law. And don't tell me we can't get things done when we work together. Democrats and Republicans work together to get that done. In particular, I want to thank Senator Jon Tester, the chair of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, and Representative Mark Takano as well, the ranking member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, for their leadership. They never stopped fighting on behalf of the veterans and their families. We learned a horrible lesson after Vietnam, how harmful effects of exposure to Agent Orange took years to manifest themselves in veterans, leaving too many veterans unable to access care when they needed it and deserved it. And they had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that that was the cause of their problem, which was difficult to prove in the long term. That's why I supported the Agent Orange Act of 1991, supporting veterans exposed to the harmful substances in Vietnam. Well, I don't want to see that again.
Social Security is in trouble. To be clear, the program is not in danger of going away, but benefit cuts are a big possibility. In a nutshell, Social Security's resources are being drained due to a massive exodus of baby boomers from the labor force. The program's primary revenue source is in the income it collects via payroll taxes, the ones that workers pay on the money they earn. As baby boomers exit the workforce and not enough workers come in to replace them, that revenue source is likely to continue to shrink. Now, Social Security has trust funds it can fall back on to keep up with scheduled benefits, but that is until those trust funds run dry. The program's trustees expect that to happen in 2033, though that timeline could change for better or worse in the coming years. The good news is that lawmakers have floated several proposals designed to pump more revenue into Social Security and prevent benefit cuts. The bad news is that one of their most feasible ideas could leave you paying into the program even more. Social Security taxes amount to 12.4% of wages, up to a certain point that changes every year. This year, workers pay Social Security tax on up to $160,200 of income. Those who have employers split that 12.4% tax evenly with the companies they work for, while individuals who are self-employed have to fork over that entire 12.4% themselves. Raising the wage cap for Social Security tax purposes could do the job of shoring up the program's finances and avoiding benefit cuts. But going this route may not be as effective as some might think, since it's a relatively small portion of the population that earns more than $160,200 every year. A more far-reaching solution could be to raise the amount of Social Security tax on all workers. The change would impact not just high earners, but workers across the board. And as such, it is the solution that lawmakers may be most inclined to move forward with. Of course, increasing Social Security taxes would no doubt put a burden on workers across a range of income levels, and it is a solution that many people might end up sorely unhappy with. Nonetheless, it is a solution that might be the best one, and so it's a good idea to gear up for the fact that Social Security taxes could grow even more burdensome in the coming years as lawmakers attempt to prevent any benefit cut. And clearly, that's not ideal. But you can help soften the blow by seeking out other ways to lower your tax burden on a whole. Universally, raising taxes could end up being the best thing that lawmakers are able to come up with. Right now, not everyone supports how the U.S. is handling inflation. David Rosenberg, a top economist, told reporters this week the Federal Reserve's aggressive hikes to interest rates, coupled with student loan payments resuming in October, will pave the way for a consumer-led recession. After a 3-year pause, the federal government is set to start changing interest on federal student loan balances, and student loan borrowers are expected to start making payments this October. The resumption comes after the Supreme Court blocked President Biden's plans to forgive up to $20,000 in student debt for federal borrowers. David Rosenberg said the loan repayments, combined with higher interest rates, threatened to trigger a consumer slowdown. The Fed has already lifted interest rates from almost 0 to over 5% since last spring, in an effort to bring inflation down to its 2% target rate. Also, traders are bracing for more rate hikes later this year. Meanwhile, Rosenberg said, the full impact of the Fed's rate hikes over the past year was yet to kick in, stressing it had historically taken 6 months for a recession to hit the economy, after interest rates rose by 500 basis points. Well, my marvelous and most amazing friends, that is the end of my daily stimulus update video. My dear friends, this coming Friday and every Friday, I will be announcing more winners for the Walmart gift card giveaway. If you would like to enter these weekly giveaways, please click and like several of my videos and then comment below the keyword of each video that you watch. My friends, the more videos that you watch and then comment on, the greater your chances of winning the giveaways.